Welcome to Doctors of the Past. Here you'll find the best medicine to heal your curiosity about history.
In this video we'll talk about glass as one of the most striking and appreciated materials in history.
Where did it come from? How was it created for the first time? What materials is it made with? What was it used for? Stay with us and you'll find out.
Sentia Secunda picked the container up from the oven with an expression of great satisfaction when she saw the result. It was not the first time she had made a bottle, nor would it be the last, but on this occasion, she had to admit that she had outdone herself because she had abandoned the curved shapes she was used to opt for a more rectilinear, more robust jar. Competition in the city was getting tougher and tougher. The new glass workshops were trying to steal her clientele. The other day she had seen an ointment jar with a shape and color suspiciously similar to the ones she used to sell. She wondered if they would be able to copy them now, with such a complex piece. Just in case, she had started sealing all her glasses with a simple but clear message. Sentia Secunda, the glass manufacturer, made it in Aquileia, the quality mark, a warning to the competition.
In its natural state, glass can be found in semi-precious stones such as amethyst, but it is most common to use sand or silica clay for its manufacture. We don't know for sure how it went from being a simply mineral element to become a solid, useful, and attractive element for countless uses. According to Pliny the Elder, its discovery was achieved by chance, by some merchants who stranded at the mouth of the Belus River, in present-day Israel. The use of natron stones to hold their pots and the silica sand where they placed them melted, forming a sticky paste that solidified when it cooled down. Being honest, it's a late and not very credible argument due to the extremely high temperatures that a fire that was only intended to cook, not to melt any element, had to reach. In any case, it is likely that its discovery was indeed unintentional, either by silica inclusions in metallurgical kilns or even in pottery ones, where sometimes stones or sand were introduced to better distribute the heat. Its first use was far from the uses it was later given in tableware, ornaments, windows, lenses, and even electronic devices. Thus, it was the Mitanni, an eminently warlike Mesopotamian state, who around 1600 BC, began to use a mixture of silica sand to cover clay pots and make them non-sticky, or stamped cylinders to mark the goods they traded. It was the Egyptians who, after the conquest of Assyria, probably took the most experienced craftsmen and began to manufacture glass jars, as evidenced by the ones recovered in the tomb of Thutmose III. For its melting, this material required great control of temperatures and, therefore, proved their vast knowledge of chemical processes. In this sense, caustic soda imported from Egypt was incorporated from the beginning to reduce the temperature of the melting point to around 15 and 1600 degrees Celsius. In its country of origin, caustic soda was also a fundamental element for mummification, but that's another story. Some minerals were added to the mixture in specific proportions to change the final color. For example, to obtain a light blue glass, iron oxide was added. If you were looking for a colorless one, hematite. For models in amber or brown, a sulfur and iron compound was used. For the violet color, manganese was added. For the different shades of blue and green, copper. To get dark green, some lead was added. With cobalt, dark blue glasses were obtained. The white ones were achieved by adding antimony. With antimony and lead, yellow ones were obtained. Furthermore, the amount of oxygen introduced into the furnace could give completely different colors, such as the opaque red or brown obtained with copper and lead, but with reductive firing, that is, without added oxygen. Undisputed masters of this craft, along with the Egyptians, would be the Phoenicians who, at the end of the 2nd millennium BC, were already producing beads with colors and motifs so striking that they could pass for current Pandora designs. Perhaps the most characteristic elements made by these Semitic craftsmen would be the small glass male heads with bulging eyes and curly hair, but we also found numerous necklace beads with concentric polka dots. Because its workmanship was similar to that of the forge, it was originally considered a kind of metal. At first, it was even modeled with the technique of lost wax or sand filling in small hollow jars or cylinders. At least in the 1st century BC, by blowing glass in molds, new shapes were achieved: trays, cups, glasses, bowls, unguentaria, and so on. All of them almost transparent, with certain shades of color, or translucent. Not surprisingly, the word crystallos means ice in Greek. The wealthy Romans were the ones who made the greatest use of these new artifacts, which partly replaced the traditional pottery ware. Especially frequent were the tiny jars that served as containers for luxury items such as oils or ointments for the body. Among the most spectacular examples, we must highlight unique pieces such as a gladiator's helmet that served as a cup for alcoholic beverages, the glass balls made in Puteoli where the map of the city appeared, or even the famous Lycurgus cup that stands out for its chromatic complexity with nanoparticles, which make it change color depending on the light impact on its walls. In addition to these unusual shapes, opaque colored glass decorated part of the luxurious Roman houses as evidenced by the vitreous tesserae that we can find in some mosaics. Their role was especially important in eyes and beads of the figures depicted. They were also frequently used in plates that covered floors or walls, forming, therefore, new kinds of mosaic compositions. The glass elements were equally striking and fragile, but once broken, generally, were sold as scrap to the vitrarius, who collected and selected the fragments by color to remelt them. Although this time only half the initial temperature was needed to work it, so it could be done in portable or purpose-built furnaces. Full transparency would be achieved in Roman times with the so-called Alexandrian glass, whose price, according to the Edict of Diocletian, would be double that of any other. The Byzantines also dominated this mixture, but, apparently, in Western Europe it would disappear, except in areas under Islamic rule. It would not be until the 10th century, in Venice, when they would reach again the full transparent glass, which 6 centuries later allowed major advances in optics, as the achievements derived from the astronomical observations developed by Galileo Galilei. Or somewhat later, Newton's studies on the decomposition of light. All this without leaving aside the glass for other aesthetic purposes, as evidenced by the stained glass windows of the Gothic cathedrals, capable of telling countless stories through a universe of color that was projected inside these monumental buildings. It was the beginning of the symbiosis between architecture and glass, whose prime example will be achieved in the glass palaces of the 19th century.
How about you? Did you know that the Mitanni were the first to melt glass on purpose?
And that glass could be remelted?
Or that full transparent glass was not achieved until the Roman period?
Whatever the case may be, we want to hear your opinion, and, if you found the video interesting, consider subscribing to the channel.